Hi, everybody. This is Tamara from Moogly, and I want to thank you for joining me today for a Yarnspirations Lunch and Learn on the Yarnspirations Facebook page. Today, we are going to be talking about, and I want to make sure I get the name just right. It's Bernat All-in-One Blanket Granny. This is a brand new yarn on Yarnspirations, and it's the Bernat blanket yarn that you know and love. I know I love it. I use it for so many projects, but now it's got that same special self-striping that lets you create granny squares without having to break the yarn. So I made all this, and at the end, you can see there's just the two ends. There's my first end back here. And then what I love about this one is they've included all this extra length of the final color. So you've got the yarn to sew them together built right in. So as you can see, this is a very exciting new development in yarn on Yarnspirations. So since we are live, give me just a second here and make sure. Yep. Okay, great. I've got my live up here in front of me. So if you have any questions, go ahead and pop those in and I'll try and answer those if I can. So, like I say, if you're just joining us, my name is Tamara Kelly from Moogly, and we're talking today about new Bernat All-in-One Blanket Granny. And it comes in 6 fantastic colors, or I should say colorways, since there's 5 colors in each one. Let's go ahead and switch over to the hand camera, and we can take a look at these together. Okay, so you can see I've got a little pile of them right here in front of me. Like I said, there are 6 total. So this one is really fun. This is the one that I used, the colorway I should say I used to make this big square right here. As you can see, these are great big squares. This is a 10.5 inch square. So that's the size that you make with this yarn. So there's this one right here. And also I want you to notice that the color after it's all crocheted together is on the label for each one. So I know sometimes, oh, I had this one upside down, but sometimes you know how it's hard to look at just the top of the skein and really visualize how it's going to come together? They have the granny square right on the label for you. So you can see exactly what you're going to get when you make this skein. So let's also, before we look at the colors here, look at the label just a little closer together. You can see they've got some information for you here. If you want to make sort of a baby blanket size, you would need 3 balls. Looks like for sort of a throw, you would need 5 balls, which is really helpful. And then over here, we've got sort of our standard information. You can see this is just like the Bernat blanket you know and love, except for the color changes. It is a super bulky. They recommend an 8mm crochet hook. This is, granny square. We're making granny, so we'll just talk about crochet today. But of course, you can knit it if you'd like. It's machine washable and dryable. Each ball makes 4 squares, which is great to know. And of course, the yardage is about 178 yards total. So, like I say, the main thing though, if you're making it for granny squares, that's the part you'll want to pay attention to. You get 4 squares out of each ball. So you can see from the top here, this is this one. This one is, oh gosh, what's this one called? Retro Pop. Very fun. And then, of course, we've got this one here. This one is just so sort of juicy looking. It's called Throwback. This one is really pretty. You can see the square it makes right here. This one is called Seaside Shine. I would have guessed forest, but Seaside Shine. Let's see. This one is really pretty. This one, it also has sort of that retro feel to it for sure. Let me turn around here. This is called Choco Berry. Very pretty. And then this one is a lovely sort of combination of neutrals. You can see that's the square it makes. And this one is called Asphalt. And then this one, unfortunately, I don't have a whole skein of it anymore because I'm actually working on a project using this particular colorway. So you can see I've busted into this one. And this one is called Fruit Juice. I think this one is just sort of has a little bit of Valentine's Day vibe to it. So I'm going to be using this one in a project on Moogly in February. But here, once again, is the square that you make with this yarn. So I wanted to just sort of compare. Let's see here. This is the original, if you're familiar with Red Heart All-in-One Granny Square. This is the first one they came out that sort of did this self-made granny square thing. And that one made 6-inch squares. You can see right here. So this is sort of your comparison. With this one, you just get little 6-inch squares. With this one, we get great big 10.5-inch squares. And of course, it's just a different feel and a slightly different look. So let's go ahead. I'm going to pull up this yarn that I've already made this first square with. And we'll find our end here. And then we'll start making a square together. So I know I can always look here, make sure we start with our green. I pulled out a little too much here, so let me get that straightened out. Happens to everybody. But this, let me get that green end out of there. There we go. Now this is a good opportunity though to show exactly what those joins look like. So right here you can see. So it's not a stamped yarn. They didn't try and stamp the color into it at the color change. Rather, they've gone ahead and they haven't tied it together. They've sort of sewn them together. And I'm not sure if sewn is the correct exact term, but it's certainly my impression of it, we'll say. I will say it is very tightly together. Now this yarn, if I really wanted to, I can break it. So I'm not going to pull that hard, but it is together. It's not coming apart. This isn't just knotted. They are together. So you are meant to continue crocheting right through this color change. So if we come back and look at the finished square, you can see you may get a little bit of color bleed through here from row to row. Now you can pull out your stitches and make them looser or tighter to try and make up for that. Get it exactly perfect if you want to. Or if you're like me and you just want to go ahead and let it run here, you can do that as well. It's really up to the individual. If you really want to mess with it, you can probably get it, pretty close to pretty well hidden. Make sure that part's in the back. But for me, I prefer to just let them lay where they land. So whatever you like to do is great. So let's go ahead and get started. Now I want to show you too. There is a specific pattern for granny squares that you want to use with this yarn in order to get it to work out the right way. As you may or may not know, there are several different ways you can make sort of granny squares that all look the same, but they're going to have slightly different instructions. So this one does have both charted instructions as well as written instructions. And these are nice, large print, ready to download free on Yarnspirations. I believe the instructions are also on the back of the label, but that print is a little bit smaller. So if you're like me and you prefer it a little bit larger, I'd recommend you head to the website and print that out. Just makes it a little bit easier. So let's go ahead and crochet as far as we can get here in one of these squares. So you want to start, like I say, you can use the picture on the label in case it just happened to land at the wrong spot, but it should begin the skein at your center color there. So they recommend you come in about 4 inches before you make your slip knot. And you can break out a yardstick or a ruler or something if you want to, but I'll just eyeball it in about 4 inches, right about there. And then what we're going to do is chain 4. Now I am using an 8mm US 11 crochet hook. This one is the Susan Bates Twist and Lock. I love that they have now expanded the twist and lock to these larger sizes. I'm really enjoying having a nice big handle on this one. So I've chained 4, and then I'm just going to slip stitch to that first chain I made. I like to just flip the tail over there. There we go. And now we've got our ring to crochet into. So to begin our round, we're going to start with a chain of 6. And this is going to count as our first double crochet and a chain 3. So what I like to do here is make those first 2 chains pretty tight. And then I'm going to make sure I make that third chain just a little bit looser because I know that's the one I'm going to come back and join to. That's going to be considered the top of that double crochet. Then I can go ahead and just make 3 tighter chains because I know I'm going to work around them. And that's our chain 6. Then we're going to work 3 double crochets followed by a chain 3 into the ring 3 times. So let's do that together. We yarn over and go right back into that ring for a double crochet. So there's 1, 2, and 3. A pretty standard way of making a granny square. Like I say, there are a few different ways to do it, but they're all pretty similar, and this is the way they've come up best for this one. So now I've chained 3. That'll be our second corner. Now we need to put 3 more double crochets into the ring. 1, 2, and 3. Now I found that when I've made granny squares with this yarn, sometimes I feel like it's starting to run out of room as I'm coming around here. If you find that to be true for yourself, you need to make yourself a little bit more room for your stitches, you can just scooch them around the ring. Just push them right around the ring, and open up a little bit more space for yourself, just like that. Got our 3 double crochets done, so we need to chain 3 again for our third corner. Then we're back into that ring for 3 more double crochets. And as you're watching, let us know, have you tried Bernat All-in-One Blanket Granny yet? Or have you tried the Red Heart All-in-One Granny Square? They recently came out with the Red Heart All-in-One Granny Square. It can make hexagons too, so I'm curious to see if this one's going to be able to make hexagons as well. Now I chain 3 again, and now we've done that repeat 3 times. The 3 double crochets, chain 3. 3 double crochets, chain 3. 3 double crochets, chain 3. So to finish off this round, we work 2 more double crochets right into that ring. So there's 1 and 2. And this is a good time to really take a look at what we've got left of our color here. Oop, get that double crochet finished. There we are. So you can see we've come right up to where our color change is. So we are pretty close to where we want to be. We've got maybe a little bit extra green here. So you've got a couple options. I could pull a few stitches out and try and work a little bit more loosely, or maybe even just leave a little bit more of a tail if I wanted to. Or one of the things I could do is work an extra double crochet right here, rather than counting that chain 3 as our first double crochet. We can see even that stitch is going to right away pull that pink in there. So if that's what you want to do, you can do it that way. Otherwise, we can just go ahead and slip stitch into that third chain. There we are. And then I like to make that slip stitch maybe just a little bit looser. Make sure that chain 3 right there looks like a double crochet, since we've got that extra yarn. After that, we then slip stitch right into that chain space. You can see now we're at that color change. So what we're going to do now is start round 2, but this is what it should look like at the end of round 1. You can see I've got our tail there. We can just weave in when we're done. So now we're ready for round 2. And this is kind of how all the rounds from here on out are going to be worked. We start again with a chain 6. So 1, 2, and make sure that third one's just a little bit looser since we're going to go ahead and join to it. Then 4, 5, 6. There we go. And then right back in that same chain 3 space for 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. And I was looking at the colors on the computer versus the colors here in my hands in real life. And I will say this pink is the only color that I think isn't really showing up totally true on screen. The teal here is pretty accurate, but in person, I think this one has a lot more red to it than orange. Here on camera, it kind of looks more salmony. And I think in person, this one is a little bit more of a true pink. But we've got our corner. Chain 6, 3 double crochets in that chain 3 space. So now we've come to this group of 3 double crochets. What do we do when we encounter one of those? We chain 1. And then we skip it. We go right to this next corner. And we put 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Flip a little bit more yarn. Chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And then 3 more double crochets right in that same space. We want to make sure to have just 4 corners. A common mistake when people are making granny squares is they kind of lose track, especially once they get a little bit bigger and all of a sudden there are 5 corners in there. So if you are somebody who struggles with that a little bit, you can try putting a stitch marker in each corner. Just use 4 stitch markers, and that way you'll know to only do the 3 double crochets, chain 3, 3 double crochets, if it's one of those ones with a stitch marker in it. Now we see another group of 3 double crochets, so we chain 1. Skip right over it, go to that corner, and make another corner. 3 double crochets, chain 3, 3 double crochets. One of the joys of granny squares, of course, is that they are such an easily memorized pattern, making them great for on the go, travel, relaxing, at the end of a tough day. Something we all enjoy doing, I think, with our crochet. And of course, then you can join them into so many things. There are already free patterns up on Yarnspirations for this yarn. I believe there's blanket, pillow, probably a couple different size blankets, Certainly be very easy to make whatever size blanket you like out of this yarn. We're going to chain one because we're at another group of stitches. Now there's a corner. So really, but you could use this to make anything. If you wanted to make clothing out of it, you could. It would be really bulky. It would be bold. It would be funky. I think, the right person could absolutely pull it off. But of course, any of your home goods, anything else you can make out of yarn, squares, you could use this yarn for. And it is so squishy and smooth, Sandy. Thank you. Yeah. It feels like your standard Bernat blanket. It's got that same great feel to it. I will say at the color joints, it is just a little bit stiffer. I want to be really honest with you guys. So you know exactly what you're getting. You can see there, just finished that third corner. So we're almost done with round two. It is just a little bit stiffer right there, just by the nature of having those two colors together. But it isn't bad. It isn't hard to work with. It just takes a little bit more time. We're going to chain one, skip this last group. Now we're back in that first corner. So we've got that chain three that'll count as our first double crochet. So we need to put two more to finish that group of three. And this kind of covers up some of that color bleed through, if you will, too. This sort of getting over in there. Now you can see this one, I've already come to this color. So if I hit a color too soon, I could pull back and make those stitches tighter. Or again, I can go ahead and keep working with it. Now, one thing, I will do one little trick here. When I hit a color just a little bit sooner than I might otherwise have liked to, rather than joining to that third chain and then slip stitching into that chain space, I'll just go ahead and skip the slip stitch. And just slip stitch, or excuse me, I should say slip the join. Skip joining that to that third chain and slip stitch directly into that chain space. And that saves me just that little bit of yarn, just in case that change came just a little bit sooner than I would like. But that's approximately what it should look like at the end of round two. Now, according to Yarnspiration's instructions, you can, like I say, you can move your stitches around, try and cover up some of those colors a little more if you'd like. And if you're somebody who is really a stickler for it, you could, in fact, cut out those color changes. But personally, I prefer to just let them ride. So that's what we're going to keep doing. And we'll begin round three here. All right. So now, like I said, this is the great thing. Once you've got it memorized, it's kind of the same round over and over again. We work through that fifth round, and then we can cut it off and make another one. So chain 6, 1, 2, make that third one just a little bigger. 4, 5, 6. I'm going to pull up a little bit more yarn. You can see it flows really beautifully from the center here, but I still don't want it. You still don't want it to feel tight while I'm crocheting. That makes our stitches a little tighter. We go right back in that same corner for 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. And you can see a lot of people struggle, especially beginners. This is a question I've been getting a lot, actually. And since granny squares are a pretty popular beginner project, I just want to point out, do you see how I snagged that corner with my pinky back here? It just helps hold the whole area a little bit more still and secure. And I think that lately, especially speaking to a lot of beginning crocheters, one of the things that they struggle with is things sort of moving around on their hook and, feeling like I can't control what's going on. Use your extra fingers. Use things, the things that aren't controlling the hook and the yarn itself to really hold on to your work as much as you can. If you've seen me crochet taller stitches, you may have noticed I really sort of hold on to the post of the stitch as I work it off, as I yarn over and pull through too. And it really just helps steady your stitches, and it makes it so much easier. So I've come to a group of 3 double crochets, so I'm going to chain 1 and skip over them, but now I've got this chain 1. So when I come to the chain 1, I'm going to work 3 double crochets right in there. Not a corner though, just 3 double crochets. That's where people run into trouble. They start thinking they need to put a corner there. So that's why having those stitch markers in the corners can be really helpful. So we've got our 3 double crochets in there. We're going to chain 1 again because we've got another group of 3 double crochets there, but now we're back at a corner. So we're going to put a corner in our corner. 3 double crochets, chain 3, 3 double crochets. So there's 2 and 3. And then we're going to chain 3 again. 1, 2, 3. And 3 more double crochets right back in that corner. So you can see I started crocheting this square at, I want to say, about 8 minutes after the hour, and we're about 12 minutes in. and I've been stopping to chat, not just crocheting straight through. So you can see this works up really quickly, but it's also just really enjoyable with this really lovely yarn. So we chain 1, we're going to skip that group. Now we've got a chain 1 right there, so we know we want to put 3 double crochets in it. 1, 2, 3, chain 1, and now we're back at the corner. So we've got 3 double crochets, chain 3, 3 double crochets. Yes, the gold and the rose shades are so lovely and warm together, you're right. This one is a really fun, I think this is probably one of the bolder colorways, although they're all pretty bold. But this one is a lot of fun for sure, and I'm really enjoying the one that I showed that I'm working on right now too. That one is really pretty. Now, of course, like any yarn, you can use it the suggested way, as shown here, to make granny squares, but of course you can use it for whatever you like. The project I'm working on it right now is not a granny square project. I'm using it more as a standard yarn. But because it has this granny square color print to it, it creates some really interesting self-striping effects as well. So even if you're not a granny square person, but you love the colorways shown in these yarns, you absolutely can use them to make other projects of all sorts. And there's some really great inspiration, like I say, right now on Yarn Inspirations, both in this yarn and in the Red Heart All-in-One Granny that they're doing to help inspire you of all the things you can do with this yarn. So I'm just continuing that same pattern. Every time I come to a chain 1, I put 3 double crochets into it. Then I chain 1 to skip over the next group. When I come to a corner, it's 3 double crochets, chain 3, 3 double crochets. So if you're somebody who likes to make one of the alternate versions of granny squares, we'll say maybe you like to turn at the end of every round, or I don't know, you like to not chain 1 in between groups, whatever it is, there's so many different ways. Absolutely have some fun with it, experiment with it. Everyone's gauge is different, and that's why everyone's going to get that color change to land in a slightly different spot. So this yarn does have a little bit of a learning curve to it, but that means you, like I say, you can find the little tricks and things that work well for you. We're back here on our last side, almost done with this round, round 3. This yarn does, of course, make it very easy to count your rounds, so that is lovely. You can see we're coming up on that next color change right there. So that's good, as long as it doesn't come too soon. I might have to work these stitches a little bit tighter. So when I see that coming a little faster than I'd like, I'm just going to put a little bit more tension on my hand. I'm not going to let my stitches be quite as loose. Yeah, that's way too soon. So when it comes up way too soon like that, then I will pull back a few groups. Like I say, I've been working with this yarn, but I haven't actually been using it to make granny squares. I've only made a couple of them so far, so I haven't completely learned my gauge for this one yet. But I did use the original, the Red Heart All-in-One Granny Square to make a sweater. And I found that, probably 3, maybe 4 squares in, I really got it down with my gauge. I knew sort of which color I needed to be a little bit tighter with, maybe like this yellow, or which ones I needed to maybe be a little bit looser with some of my stitches. And like I say, a little bit of a learning curve to make the grannies, but it really is so rewarding. Especially if weaving in ends isn't your favorite part of making the granny squares. So you can see I've been working those stitches a little bit tighter. I've got a little bit more room here, but not a lot. So I could pull this whole round out and back, or we could keep going. Up to you. I think since we've only got 6 minutes left on our live here, I'm just going to go ahead and let it ride. But I would definitely skip that joint and just slip stitch into that spot right there. And then, of course, we can keep going. And this is a great tip from Sandy in the comments. Thank you, Sandy. Another great thing, if you do find that, oh my gosh, I just, I can't get through the yellow or the pink or whatever it is, you can switch your hook size. Go up a hook size if you find, gosh, I've just got too much of this color when I get to the end of the round. Try bumping up a hook size. If you, like me, are just, oh gosh, coming up a little bit short, it might help to go down a hook size for that color. Whatever tricks you use, just find the ones that make you happy. Like I say, if you've got a little bit too much, work an extra stitch. Go ahead and cover up that chain 3. Don't count it as a double crochet. You can use that to take up a little bit extra of the yarn. Not having enough, unfortunately, the best thing is just to pull it back out and make those stitches a little bit tighter all the way around. So, but for the sake of time, since like I say, we've only got 5 minutes left now, I'm going to go ahead and begin round 4 so we can continue to see the pattern. but it's just like round 3. And there's only 5 rounds in the whole thing. There's 5 colors. You can see right here per square. You see we're already through 3 of them. So we'll go ahead and start round 4 together. I'm going to chain 1, 2. Again, I always like to make that third one a little bit bigger. Just makes it so much easier to join to if we decide we want to. Then chain 3 again. That'll be the corner. And then right back into this corner for our 3 double crochets. So if you wanted to, you could just keep going with this yarn. You don't have to cut it off after each square. You could, just keep crocheting one giant granny and see where the colors lie. I think that would be really interesting as well. I'm very curious to see what people come up with for this yarn and what sort of patterns we get to see this in. This would be a really great sort of accent piece. I've seen a lot of things where people will sew like a granny square to the front of a tote or maybe a series of granny squares. This one is so big and bold. It would be really fun there. You could use it as a great big pocket. All sorts, like I say, put it on the back of a jacket. People have so many things. Yes, and another great tip from Yarn Inspirations. Also, if you're running short on yarn, drop the chain 1 space. Instead of, if you're coming up, say with this yellow, I switched to a smaller hook or whatever it was, and I just couldn't get enough, skip the chain 1. Just work the 3 double crochets, 3 double crochets. Skip those chain 1s for that round, and that will probably get you enough yarn as well. Thank you. Another great tip. Yeah, whatever little tricks you can do. Remember, at the end of the day, you're the only one who's going to know if you skipped that chain 1 or if maybe you made an extra single or double crochet, to crochet over the chain. Whatever makes it work is absolutely fine. I always say if anybody's getting that close to your crochet to criticize it, then they're probably not a friend anyway. The only exception, of course, would be if you're entering it into the state fair. Then you've got to do it all just right. All right, there we go. Isn't that pretty? I love the addition of the navy in here. I feel like it just really sorts of grounds this whole square so beautifully. And once again, I think this one's called the Retro Pop colorway. So definitely has that pop to it. And all the colorways in this one, I'd say right now, have a little bit of that retro feel, or at least most of them. There's lots of oranges and browns, but of course we've seen for 2025, the Pantone color of the year is definitely in that brown category. So I think we will be seeing lots of those neutrals this year as well. So I just want to point out, I've been busy chatting instead of talking through the pattern. It's just your typical granny square from here. We've got the corner with 3 double crochets, chain 3, 3 double crochets. We come to a group, we chain 1. It's just a chain 1, we put 3 double crochets into it. Chain 1, 3 double crochets into it. Now we're back to a corner, so we're going to make another corner. So it just grows out really beautifully. And then, since we are just about out of time here, let me pull up our finished one again right here. You can see this one I had a little bit more luck, but I still ended up with a little bit of overlap there. Again, like I say, I find I usually have to make 4 or 5 of these to really sort of get the complete hang of it. And at the end of the day, I don't mind just a little bit of overlap either. But I wanted to really point out one of the lovely things about this yarn is that they have provided this extra length in the 5th color. So you can see it's not a ton of length. I think it says it's approximately 42 inches. And of course, this section is, I'll go ahead and pull this one out here. Let's go ahead and pull this all the way out to the next skein. And this is fun too. You can actually very easily, because of these color changes, pull out, like if you wanted to set aside enough for one granny square and give it to one person, and then you give yourself enough for another granny square, you can do that and pull it apart really beautifully. But I just wanted to point out that the last and the first color are also sewn together, so you could just make one giant, continuous, big granny square blanket and let those color changes fall where they may, or work it as a regular yarn. It's not going to come apart at the granny squares unless you cut it apart. I do cut out that section. I don't want to try and have that part in when I'm weaving in my ends or sewing it together. I don't want to run that through my yarn needle, so I will cut that part out. But then I will just start my new square from there and finish the previous square right there. So it is just a really fun yarn, a little bit of a learning curve, but so much fun. And it is, like I say, it's Bernat blanket, so you can do anything that you can do with Bernat blanket, you could do with it. You could make some of the squishes on Moogly if you really wanted to, make them really bright and colorful, and I think that would be really fun. But you're going to have the extra length at the end of each skein here to be able to sew it to the next square or, whatever you're doing with it. And I think that is just such a lovely and thoughtful addition. So we'll go ahead. I think we've hit our 30-minute mark. So let's switch back to the other camera. I want to thank you all again so much for joining me today for this Yarn Inspirations Lunch and Learn. Again, this has been Bernat All-in-One Blanket Granny. It's got a long name, but it is a fantastic yarn, and I really think you're going to enjoy using it. So do give it a try. It's available now on yarnspirations.com. Have a great day, everybody, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.